welcome to Overtime Hockey Talk. My name is Mark Paul, co-host Justin Baker, joining me via Skype. Lots to talk about as the playoffs continue. Two controversial goals in the Toronto-Boston Game 5. Leafs now up 3-2. And the Calgary Flames have been eliminated, and it is a clear curse to be a number one seed in these playoffs, as for the first time in the history of the NHL, neither top seed moves on, not to mention the fact that they won a game between the two of them in 9 tries. That's where I'm stopping. You go ahead.
Yeah, just embarrassing. Dude, I mean, so first time in the modern expansion era, right, that we see both top seeds eliminated. And these were two teams that could score goals aplenty, but for whatever reason, dried up. I mean, frick, Gaudreau and Monahan nowhere to be found in the series. And I got to tip my cap to Mike Smith, because he was probably, to me, going in, the one guy I thought would have been the weak link in the series. And he actually played pretty decent. And dude, his offense in front of him just couldn't seem to find the back of the net to save their lives.
Which is very strange, because the whole point of this series was that they were supposed to have the depth to be able to kind of neutralize, or at least when I say neutralize, I don't necessarily mean that they weren't going to, that McKinnon and Rantanen and those guys weren't going to score. I know Rantanen was playing separate from the rest of those guys, and he did manage to score in this series. But you thought that top to bottom, the Flames had by far the most depth, and so they would be able to, that top line could go shot for shot, and then the rest of the guys can kind of make up for whatever McKinnon and Rantanen did. And it really didn't work out. Matthew Tkachuk, I feel like he could have been more Brad Marchand like. They really needed him to be that guy. And to me, it looked like the Flames were playing regular season hockey, and the Colorado Avalanche were playoff, like they were in the thick of the playoffs, and they have been playing playoff games. I mean, they had to win 8 of their last 9 games to get into the playoffs. So there is that, but I mean, I don't know. It's strange to me, because it's not like in the past we haven't seen a good team. Generally the top seed, they're not playing balls out at the end of the year. That's just, they don't have to. Whereas these lower seeds, they're playing hard. So yeah, sometimes maybe game 1 they steal the game because they've been playing playoff hockey and the other team just needs to kind of catch up. But nobody ever figured it out. Like they just died out completely.
Yeah, I think that's well said. I mean, don't get me wrong. The Flames looked good in game 1. I figured after that, I was like, man, okay, Flames are probably gonna win this series. It looks like it's pretty one-sided at this point. And then game 2, McKinnon just decided to take over the series, man. And it just seemed to me in games 2 through 5 that the Flames could not handle the speed from McKinnon and Rantanen, whether they were playing together or on separate lines. It just seemed they couldn't do anything to slow either one of these guys down.
And honestly, as great as those players were, Grubauer was even better. Grubauer was phenomenal in that series. And I mean, I think that, we had said it all year. We were wondering when one of these two goalies would finally kind of break out of their shell and be a guy that we thought they could be. And we saw Grubauer play really well last year for the Washington Capitals, get to the playoffs and kind of, he fell apart in the first 2 games and was pulled, and Braden Holtby goes in, and the rest is history. Well, here's his second opportunity at the playoffs, and he found a way to turn things around.
Right.
He was fantastic, and I mean, it's good on Colorado. They're going to play the winner of Vegas and San Jose. They'll be nice and rested, I'd say. And I mean, at this point, I think I'm leaning towards Vegas. Like, I don't know if San Jose can win a game in Vegas. I don't know if anybody in the Western Conference can win a game in Vegas. I'm not sure.
Yeah, Martin Jones just got to stop a puck first.
Well, that would help. That would definitely help. Before we go on to those other series, I do want to take a moment and I guess not eulogize this Calgary Flames team, but obviously this was if we think about this team's projection. When we look at last year, and they missed the playoffs, and a large part of that was due to goaltending, but also really poor defense. They trade Dougie Hamilton. They bring in James Neal, and he doesn't really do a whole lot, but really Elias Lindholm ends up being the big acquisition for this team. Matthew Tkachuk takes another step. They dominate in the regular season. This team isn't going to just go away. It's not. I think that they missed the playoffs last year, so it's not that crazy to think if you just put that into perspective. They missed the playoffs, they made the playoffs this year, and then maybe next year they can win a round or two. So is it? It's not as crushing as a loss as for Tampa Bay, where Tampa Bay has been in 3 of the last 4 conference finals. They've won at least a round every year the last 4 years, so the expectation was Stanley Cup or bust. This Flames team was like, I think this team maybe they could win the cup, but it wasn't. It certainly was. You knew everything was going to have to fall into place for them, and obviously it didn't.
No, I'm interested to see next year because, like you talked about, the defense to me is going to be the big question mark next year. Giordano, he had a great season. He's probably going to win the Norris. But what defense are you going to get next year, with this team? Are you going to get the defense of, last season, or are you going to get this year's defense, Granted, swapping out one guy, Noah Hannafin, is, is that really the catalyst that projected this team into one of the top defenses in the league? But, I'm interested to see where this team is next year, especially now, this is going to be David Ritchie or Riddich's team moving forward. So
we'll never live it down, not even from ourselves. You got to think though that they're going to go out and whether it's a re-signing of Mike Smith or they're going after somebody else, you have to think that they're looking to upgrade at the goaltending position. Rittich is fine, but obviously there's a reason why Mike Smith started in the playoffs.
No, for sure. I don't know if it's maybe so much a lack of confidence in Rittich. I think it was more or less just the experience of Mike Smith that played out, that they wanted to start him. And, I think Rittich, while he established himself as a potential, 1A, 1B type goaltender, I don't think maybe they're 100% sold on him yet as like the guy moving forward for the next, 5-6 years.
Yeah, you have to wonder who the Flames are going to target in this offseason. That's my big question because, they do have, a little bit of cap space. They've got about $10 million in cap space, which is nice. And they do have to re-sign Sam Bennett and Matthew Tkachuk, but I don't think that Sam Bennett is, you're looking at maybe $3.5 million, $4 million for Sam Bennett. And Matthew Tkachuk, well, he's been really good. He's been. I don't think he's getting more than 5 to 6. So you've got that with some, you've got players that you can move. They do have 3 defensemen who are all unrestricted free agents at the end of next year: Brody, Hamonic, and Stone. So you got to re-sign probably 1 or 2 of those guys. Likely Brody, I think, is probably the guy you'd re-sign there. But that's all their right-handed D are all becoming free agents at the end of next season. So maybe they move one of those guys. They'll need to re-sign a goalie. I could see looking for a new home for like a Michael Frolik or James. Could you trade James Neal with 4 years left on his deal? Is there anything to be done? Is there any team? Maybe James Neal is you hang on to him for next year, but maybe he is one of the guys who, like, he becomes the only guy in his career in the league who has been taken in both expansion drafts. Maybe he goes to Seattle.
Yeah, that's not too far out of the realm of possibilities. I think moving Neal would be probably a smart move, but it's finding a taker, right? Especially if you don't want to wait around for Seattle to get there to their draft. But I think right now his value's pretty low, but there might be a team or two out there that's willing to say, maybe like we talked about in Ottawa, who needs to get to the cap floor. next season. He's just a year removed from his 10th in a row 20-goal season. So, there's still potential that he can still be a scorer in this league.
Well, and I guess if you're the Flames, you're probably gonna give this another year. You're gonna hope that maybe it was just an adjustment period, that maybe he needs to obviously adjust some of his training. I don't know. He did look a little slow. I think that he's been beat up the last couple years, so you're willing to give him a pass on this year. Especially, it's not like if he was playing well, that the Flames would have beat the Avalanche. I don't think that moves the needle that much to where maybe they are able to win an extra game if he's playing really, really well. But I don't think he was the difference of winning or losing. So I think you're willing to maybe wait this out one more year. After that, who knows? If he has another really bad year, I could even see them buying him out.
Oh, wow. I don't know if I'd go that far, but I think maybe you play the card of trying to get Seattle to take him at that point, and maybe say, hey, we'll throw you a second rounder or a third round pick or something.
Well, remember that at the end of next season, we're probably going to we might see some sort of amnesty buyouts or something like that to be able to reset the table. Right. Yeah. So, okay. Well, Flames, good luck to you in the draft in June. Sorry that we're talking about your exit so soon. That's unexpected but exciting. I mean, if a team has to go on to the second round and the Flames have to get eliminated, Colorado's not a bad choice to be able to watch more, because they've been very exciting. They've been very good, and I think this team, it looks like, because of how weak the West is it fair to say that their window is opening right now? Right, like we just saw the little the little knob on the window start turning, and that window is starting to creep open.
Well, listen, we've talked about it with Boston before in the past, and last year was a clear indication. If you get one line that can really dominate, and you get good goaltending, and just your second, third, and fourth line can chip in just a little bit, you can potentially make a little bit of a run. And I think Colorado, they've got that top line, right? Because I'm almost ready to anoint Nathan McKinnon as probably the number 2, if not maybe number 3 center behind right there with Crosby and McDavid. And so they've got a guy up there who can really take over an entire game. And I think Tyson Barrie's looked pretty good, and Grubauer, if he continues to play just as well as he did against Calgary, I don't see why not they can't make a run at this thing.
Yeah, especially with if San Jose can go in to Vegas and win a game, then they're pushing it to Game 7. Colorado's got a little bit of rest, which never hurts. And I think that Colorado can get ready for these teams. I don't know if I can see them beating either one of them. I just think both these teams feel more battle tested to me than Calgary. Vegas, of course, going to the finals last year. They know exactly how they have to play. San Jose's been in this a million times. Everyone on their team seemingly. And whereas Colorado, this is, you're playing with house money at this point, right? Like, nobody thought they'd beat the Flames, or very few at least. And the ones that said, "Oh no, I think they have a chance," they just knew they had a chance, but it wasn't like they were going to put a ton of money on it.
Right.
So to me, that second round's probably where this all ends. But it'll still be interesting to see if those teams can somehow taper down McKinnon. But let's just, since you brought up Boston, let's just shift to we'll talk about that Game 5 for a minute. I just want to get your take. You didn't watch the whole game, but you saw the highlights. You saw the goal, the infamous Matthews goal that apparently many people think was shouldn't have been a goal, including some goaltenders like Cam Talbot, Marty Biron. Although Marty Biron tweeted something like, I don't think that here, he said this. He said, I guess they must have felt Rask wasn't going to be able to come across, but to me it doesn't matter. Contact was made, and in my opinion, should have been overturned. So there's been some, different former goalies, current goalies coming out and saying like, what the heck, this shouldn't have been a goal. You watched it. What are your thoughts on the goal?
Yeah, I'm a little torn. I mean, I do lean towards them calling it a goal because of the, it being a little bit inconclusive in my mind. Because when you look, right, you got two guys battling in front of the net. Hyman gets up, he cross-checks, I can't remember who it was from Boston in the back. And inadvertently, I mean, it does sort of, you see the Boston player almost looks like he pushes off expecting that cross-check, and Hyman drifts back a little bit and kind of nudges Tuukka Rask. Now, I understand there was contact made. There's no doubt in my mind about that. However, it, to me, didn't look like it really kept Tuukka Rask from doing what he needed to do.
It didn't. It didn't knock him like off his feet. And it was. I mean, if you think about what Hyman does, he cross checks a guy who is planted, so that when you follow through with that cross check, you're essentially doing like a bench press with your stick against something. So then you're on skates. You're going to go backwards when you do it. Right. So he goes backwards into the goalie. So there's the argument like he clearly went into him without anybody pushing him in. But at the same time, he didn't actually purposefully go into him. He did use a stick to push off of the Bruins guy, but he wasn't trying to back up into the goalie. At least there's no way to know that intent.
Right. And I don't think either, too, that had he not hit Rask, right, I don't think Rask would have stopped the puck anyways. And so to me, I think this is where the NHL maybe gets a little chintzy a lot of times with refs. They'll just say, oh, man, his skate just nicked the side of his pad. So there's no way he could have got over to do the splits because of that. It's like, no, he wasn't going to make that save. The goal was probably going to count. And they called it a goal on the ice, right? The refs didn't wave it off or say this was goaltender interference. So to me, there's not enough evidence where you look at, what Hyman did and say, man, he really knocked him off. And there was no way Rask was getting around it. I mean, if Rask had, spun to the right a little bit towards his blocker side, yeah, okay, now I understand that. Yeah, okay, now he's off his balance a little bit, and now he's got to move even further over to his left to make that save. But to me, there was barely any contact, and it didn't seem to keep Rask from doing what he was doing in the net.
Yeah, I mean, I think you look at this like football. In the NFL, you have pass interference. But even if there is pass interference, if the guy couldn't catch it, they don't call pass interference. They say that the ball was uncatchable. So it made no difference in the play. And Marty Biron is basically saying just that. It made no difference in the play, but it still should be a goaltender interference. And that's just ridiculous. Why would that still be goaltender interference when it didn't actually affect the goal?
Right. And we're getting to the point where, like, almost in football, how they're trying to protect the quarterbacks, for instance, so much where, like, if you even graze a finger on their helmet, whether or not there's any intent or any harm done, I mean, they immediately call something, right? And I think the NHL is almost getting to the point where, like, they're trying to protect goaltenders the same way they protect quarterbacks. And now I understand why they want to protect these players, why they want to try to keep people safe. And I'm not knocking them for that. However, I do think sometimes we get a little carried away with the way we call these goaltender interference calls.
Yeah. Plus, later in the game, you see that. Well, not that much later in the game, but the Bruins also scored a goal that was controversial, and it looked like it was probably offside. And so it was so hard to. I mean, we're talking millimeters worth of space in between. It was probably too hard to call, and so of course the goal stands as well, and I have no problem with that either. Like, I think that it was too close to call, and that's not really the heart of that rule. I mean, if it's a millimeter off, I don't expect a human being to figure that out. Like, there's it's okay. And so that goal should stand, as should the Matthews one. Doesn't matter, because the Leafs scored a second goal, and so they win the game. Even if both those goals are disallowed, it's 1-0, and the game is the Leafs. So for all the I've seen things like the league just wants the Leafs to win. Are you kidding me? The league loves American teams. They know that if American teams win, the United States will watch, especially Boston. Toronto people, they're going to watch. People from Toronto are going to watch the playoffs if it's Carolina and Dallas in the Stanley Cup Finals, people are still going to watch.
Well, I get the argument, but the whole point is it's again Boston, right? People are going to watch Boston if they go through. People are going to watch Toronto if they go through. It's not like the league is trying to get Toronto to win because they're playing Carolina, a market that's so small. It has nothing to do with that, because either one of these teams win, people are still going to watch, and it's not going to keep viewers, from not watching.
Yes, and the winner of this series gets to play the Columbus Blue Jackets. So that's
oh boy.
I actually think I'm going to try to go to Game 3 of that series if the Leafs win this series, which I think they will. I've been saying.
The question is, are they winning Game 6 at home?
Yes.
Okay.
I from the very beginning, I was saying that I thought the Leafs would win in 6. Here we are. They have an opportunity to win in 6. It didn't go exactly how I had predicted it. I did say the Leafs would win Game 3 and 4, lose 5 in Boston, and then win 6 in Toronto. They just did it backwards, and that's okay. I'm fine with it. But yeah, I do think that the Leafs take Game 6 in Toronto. Even if this series goes 7 games, I mean, this series has been back and forth. So I think the Leafs getting 2 cracks at this, Boston with the must win here. I think that they're going to have to go all out. So if Boston doesn't win this game in Toronto, I think that Toronto will still go back to Boston and win. But I'm confident the Leafs win on Easter. They'll rise to the second round.
I will say it is nice for Toronto. Matthews has finally shown up these last couple games. He is making an impact. First few games, it was great. Tavares, Marner, they were taking over the games, when they needed to. And, now it's like you don't hear their names as much, but it's great to see Matthew finally get on the board a little bit more.
Absolutely. Let's switch gears, and we'll just start running down these other series that, of course, we're recording this at 10 a.m. on Saturday, April 20th. So we've got 3 games on the docket today. Dallas plays Nashville, Winnipeg and St. Louis, and then Carolina, Washington. And then, of course, Sunday at 7 p.m. is the Sharks-Vegas Game 6. So let's start with Dallas-Nashville. This has been, I think we both thought this series would be closer than I think a lot of people thought. I don't remember what you picked, what your pick for this series was.
7.
You said Dallas in 7. Okay, I said Nashville in 7. So we're on a collision course here to a Game 7. Now that we're tied 2-2, same feeling. You still think Dallas is going to take this one in 7?
Yeah, I think Pekka Rinne has looked pedestrian. Ben Bishop has been otherworldly in my mind. He has been the difference maker in this series. Now, granted, it has been nice, especially Game 4. Dallas has shown that they can score some goals, and it's great to see that their forwards are actually getting up there and putting the puck in the net. But man, when you look at both these goaltenders on either end of the ice, I know Rinne has had a couple good games in the series, but overall, I think Ben Bishop has really given Dallas a fighting chance. And I think if they are going to win and close out the series in 7, which I still think it's going to go, he's going to still have to be the difference maker.
Yeah, I mean, I guess the biggest questions then, Pekka Rinne, let's say he has another game like Game 4. Do we see a goaltending change for the Predators?
No, I really don't. I think much like Calgary did with Mike Smith, I think at this point, Pekka Rinne is the guy who's shown he can bounce back. He's the guy who can, steal a series if he needs to. And so I think if you're Nashville, you still got to ride him out. I don't think you pull the plug on him quite yet and go to Saros, because to me, you see Saros, he's a fine backup, but he didn't show me this year that he was capable of stealing a lot of games. So I wouldn't put a lot of faith in him right now.
Yeah, and I guess the other question is, penalty kill aside, Dallas, of course, they scored 3 power play goals in Game 4, and their power plays looked very dangerous. And I think I actually made the comment that, yes, well, they do have a good power play. They aren't that scary. And I think I should probably rescind that, because they've been very scary in this series, particularly Zuccarello, who has 3 goals already in 4 games in this series, turning out to be, of course, he scores in his first game with the Stars and then gets hurt the same period. And then he comes back and he had a good end of the regular season, the last few games that he played, and comes into the playoffs, and he's been great. I think now we're looking at it, we're going, man, these trade deadline acquisitions, particularly this year, have been a really strong when you think of Duchesne and Zuccarello and a Dzingel, like what these guys have been able to do to help their team move on to the next round. They've been really important. Even like a Charlie Coyle for Boston, who has maybe been the most consistent player for them through all 5 games. I mean,
wow.
he has. There was the one game I think he had like 8 or 9 shots on goal. I think in game 1 he was Boston's best player. And when that Bergeron line has been nowhere to be found in a couple of those games, Charlie Coyle was the one who was generating quite a bit of offense for the Bruins. And so some of these trades really making a big difference. Although I guess you can look at the other flip side for the Predators, and Wayne Simmons just invisible.
Yeah, a lot of that team has been invisible up front. I mean, man, no one on that team has more than 2 points right now. And I think if Nashville wants any hope of getting out of that first round, they need someone to step up and score some goals or get some points on the board, because, I mean, no one on this team, like I said, has more than 2 points, 2 goals, and their leading goal scorer is a guy named Rocco Grimaldi. Who is this kid?
Yeah, Rocco.
We should be talking about Philip Forsberg or, like you said, Wayne Simmons. But yeah, they need their top guys to get going.
Yeah, I do think that Nashville figures it out this game. They're going to win Game 5. I still think that we're on a course. Nashville will win this one. Game 6 goes to Dallas, and then we go back to Nashville for Game 7. And I mean, frankly, everything's up in the air at that point. I do think Nashville has the playoff experience to figure this one out. But again, Ben Bishop, man, I say it every year. Any year he's in the playoffs, the guy looks bigger and bigger every game. He grows. Let's go to St. Louis and Winnipeg. St. Louis seems to be the comeback kids in this series. They've had 2 come from behind victories to win in overtime, right? And not overtime. The last game wasn't in overtime, but it basically was. They scored with like 15 seconds left, so we'll say that that's like pseudo overtime. This team, I mean, St. Louis has just found a way to win. There's really no other way to put it other than they're pulling. It's almost like they're here, they're playing, and then they pull something out of their ass and they make it.
Yeah. I mean, Binghamton's looked decent. Hollebuck. To me, both these guys have pretty much played almost equal in this series. But the difference is I think St. Louis, their forwards are finding ways to win those 50-50 puck battles. And we saw it exactly on that Tyler Bozak just looked like makeshift pass out to Jaden Schwartz in the middle of the ice. He went in, won that battle, got the puck, and just flipped it out there. And that's how you win a game. I mean, to me, Winnipeg's not doing enough right now to win those battles and really control the tempo that they need to be to play their game.
Yes, I'd say Winnipeg has. I think we knew that they were struggling at the end of the year, and they haven't been bad. It's just they don't look like they have this killer instinct that maybe we saw last year. Like last year when Winnipeg and Nashville were going head to head, there was just a different feel about both those teams. This year, it's like they've lost some kind of edge. I don't know what it's like a feel for that team, but when you watch them, you don't get the same kind of like, well, they're going to win. Like, sometimes you just look at a team. Like I always remember the Red Wings in the early mid 2000s where, they could be down a goal all game. And you were just like, they're just toying with this other team. They're not even trying. And then they go, all right, okay. We really, let's just score here in the last couple minutes. Goal. And then it was, all right, we'll go win in overtime. Okay, they win in overtime because they didn't care. They could just destroy everybody. And that's kind of how Nashville and Winnipeg felt at times last season was they could play they could not necessarily sit back, but they just played their game and then they could take over at any point whenever they wanted to. But they don't have that same all right, time to take over the game type of feel to them this year.
Yeah, and I do think the other big difference, too, to me for this team is, Winnipeg's not really getting production out of their bottom six, whereas St. Louis is right now. And I think outside of Line and Connor and Blake Wheeler, there's really nobody on that team. You look at guys like Brian Little or Matthew Perreault, guys that, should on their bottom six be producing a little bit more. And you're not really getting much out of these guys. And I think really that's the other difference to me is, if Winnipeg has any shot at coming back in the series, they need guys on their bottom six to produce.
Yep, that would be that's always ideal in the playoffs for your lower guys to produce. Yeah, I see coming here in Game 6. You're in St. Louis. I just think we're about to see that Jets Jets are going to win this Game 6, go back home, win Game 7. St. Louis has given this they've been phenomenal. I just think there's another level that the Jets, if they can find it, that not only can they win this series, but I think that the West is so wide open for them that this is the opportunity. I mean, man, if the Blues and the Stars are the ones playing in the second round, it's just this is weird. It feels like 20 years ago, the Blues and the Stars when they were. Remember, the Stars won the Cup in '99, and then the Blues won the President's Trophy in 2000. And that was the year that they lost maybe to the Sharks or something like that. Those two teams were really good at the same time, and it just throwback to like Pavel Dimitra and Ed Belfour,
Darian Hatcher.
There you go, Darian Hatcher. There you go. Last series being played today: Washington and Carolina. Series is tied 2-2. I believe direct quote was, "Put a fork in them, they're done," regarding the Hurricanes. And they manage a pretty impressive game number 4. They win 2-1. Goaltenders stood on their head. Really the only, Washington is getting outplayed 5-on-5, and it's been their power play that's kind of been able to carry them a little bit. They're 20% on the power play, but this Carolina team just keeps on finding ways to win. Yeah,
I mean, it's been impressive, actually. You think the reigning Stanley Cup champs could come up with an answer, and I think it'll be interesting to see what they do. They're going to have no TJ Oshie, tonight. Not sure, again, about the status of him moving forward beyond tonight, but so he'll be out. Haven't had a look at the lineups either, so I'm kind of curious who bumps up. I would think that Tom Wilson would bump up, and knowing that, I think Tom Wilson and the way Ovi reacted at the end of that game about the TJ Oshie hit is probably this series is going to get a little rough, I think, moving forward.
So who else is he going to knock unconscious? I can't wait.
Well, I think Tom Wilson is going to probably go after Mr. Fogle a little bit. So,
and he's been maybe their best player offensively for sure. When you look at some of the stat lines for this series, first off, both these teams are 20% on the power play and 80% on the penalty kill, which, well, I guess if one team's 20%, that means the other's 80% on the one. But so their power plays have been clicking at the exact same percentage. The goals for is a little bit different because of that blowout win for Carolina, but 12-9 in favor of Carolina. But just the fact that we've, the home teams won every game here. Carolina has actually outshot Washington in these games.
27 shots too.
Yeah, I mean, on average per game, it's 6 or 7 shots per game. Carolina has dominated them in the faceoff circle, though 54% in the faceoff circle. But this series has never felt out of reach for Washington. Washington is kind of getting pushed around 5-on-5 in a way. They're not really scoring the way that we're used to. They only have 9 goals through 4 games. That's pretty minuscule. The only teams that have less goals than the Washington Capitals are the Pittsburgh Penguins, the Nashville Predators, and the Tampa Bay Lightning. So, it's weird that the Lightning are that low down on that list. It's just so. The Lightning go plus 100 over the course of 82 games, and in 4 games they're minus 11. That's unbelievable.
I'm calling it right now. Devontae Smith-Pelly got the call up. He comes in. He's the hero for game number 5.
Dude, Devontae Smith-Pelly. All right. I love it. One more series, San Jose and Vegas. Where do you see this one going tomorrow night on Easter Sunday?
Boy, you got to lean towards Vegas right now. I mean, Martin Jones just can't stop the puck. And I think I'm almost getting to the point where you have to say, is it time to put in Aaron Dell?
I mean, as a coach, man, what do you do? Well, you look at no, I think you stick with Martin Jones. And you know why? You stick with Martin Jones because you go, this is the guy you gave me. I'm going to lose with the guy you gave me. I'm not going to lose with the backup goalie who he's proven that he is nothing more than a backup goalie. Whereas Martin Jones has at least had a history of having some lights out games. So I guess you're hoping that maybe he can find himself here in Vegas. I mean, you're going to need one heck of a game to be able to keep pace here. I mean, but this game has really been a story of goaltenders and which team's offense is going to show up. If that Mark Stone, Pacioretty, Stastny line is on, it's over.
Yeah,
they've got 28 points between the.
Yeah, I will say, I mean, San Jose does have the offensive capability to come back and really dominate this series if they can get it going. And I think, Nyquist has been fine, Joe Thornton's been fine, but I think there's still another level that I'd like to see guys like Brent Burns go to a little bit more. Timo Meier, I want a little bit more out of him, and I think if these guys can get it going just a little bit more, I think this team could find a way to push it to 7.
Yeah, I mean, Erik Karlsson has been very good in this series. I mean, he's got 7 points in the series. You can't ask for much more than you're the guy you brought in to lead your team and to be able to push your offense. I mean, he's helped you get 7 goals in 5 games. So that's you're not complaining about that. It really has been like Evander Kane's got 1 goal in these 5 games. Nyquist has no goals in these 5 games. You're a lot of these guys just aren't. I mean, Hurdle, Couture, both 4 and 3 goals. They're playing really well. I'd look at Evander Kane and say, we need you to score. Like, you brought him in for one reason, and it was to score. Yes, he has 5 points, or 4 points. I'm sorry, but you brought him in to score goals. So I think we need to see Evander Kane maybe score in this game, or some combination of Kane or Nyquist or even a Brent Burns who's got his 1 goal in 5 games. Only 2 points for Brent Burns. So
yeah, that's power play too. I mean, needs to get going a little bit more.
Yes,
I think too.
Yes, absolutely. Well, we both picked the Sharks in 7. I'm going to stick with it because it's still a possibility. So I'm going to stick with it. And it feels like Vegas. Now that we've watched these two teams go head to head 5 times, yes, San Jose won the last game 5-2, but it just feels like Vegas now. What I was talking about with Nashville and Winnipeg last year, Vegas almost has that like, oh, we need to win. Okay, let's go win. Like that's the way this team feels now, and they've really given us 2 years of that. Like this team has almost always had that. Oh, we need to win. Let's go win. So I mean, it's hard for me to pick against them, but because I picked San Jose in 7, you knew there'd be ups and downs in this series. I do think that San Jose has the horses to do this, and if there's any team that can beat Vegas in the West, I think it's got to be San Jose. I don't see Colorado doing it, and I really don't see Winnipeg doing it this year either. So I think it's maybe the winner of this series is the one going to the finals. I feel that way about that Toronto-Boston series too. That the winner of that series is going to go to the finals.
Wow.
So what Columbus did was great, but I think both those teams are in the zone. They're not going to let Columbus do what they did Tampa Bay, and Washington has looked very beatable. The Islanders, I just don't think that they can keep pace once it's a team that's stacked top to bottom. I don't think they're going to be able to do what they've been doing to a team like Pittsburgh. Like Pittsburgh they didn't look good all year, but
yeah.
It'll be interesting to see. Any last thoughts before we sign off?
Yeah, just want to just show my excitement for Stevie Y coming back to Detroit. I mean, my God, I couldn't have been more excited when I heard the press conference was official. Like, you'd heard rumors when he decided to step down as GM last year, but it became official on the 19th for number 19 to come back to Detroit.
Yes, I'm very happy for you. I'm happy for Stevie Yzerman. I think this is great. This is what he wanted all those years ago. And
Yes.
and it really makes it causes me to pause because the Red Wings have taken a step back, obviously, from the team that they were. Let's say like the last time they were very competitive, maybe the 2013 that final shortened season that we had. That was maybe their last shot at like competing for anything at that point.
Yeah, that's fair.
I think that if Ken Holland had stepped aside and Steve Yzerman had taken over then, what does this Red Wings team look like with Steve Yzerman at the helm? Because let's be honest, like Ken Holland, well, yes, he's drafted some good players. Larkin's a nice piece. We're all excited for Zadina to see what he can do. But the players other than Larkin, a lot of the guys that are on their roster just kind of fell into their lap. So there wasn't a whole I don't think that if you had somebody else at the helm that they wouldn't have been able to have a chance at Zadina. Like I would have taken Zadina at 6. So I think that Ken Holland, I think he's very good at running an organization. I don't think that he's up to the task anymore as far as the player development and the evaluation of players. I think that there's just, he's just maybe run his course or he needs to take this step back. He's going to be the senior vice president of the team. But to me, he's going to go and take an opportunity somewhere else as the GM at some point.
Yeah. And Seattle's still on the table for him, I think. But to me, the biggest reason that I'm so happy for Yzerman coming here is not only it's a homecoming for a guy who meant so much to a franchise like Detroit, but it's that Yzerman as a general manager has shown he's not afraid to make the big move, right? I mean, we talked about him getting rid of Ben Bishop, a guy who was in his prime, looked really, really good. What turned out to replace him with just a phenomenal goaltender in Andrei Vasilevsky. We've seen him make big moves when he moved out Marty St. Louis. He essentially flipped, Kyle Quincy for what turned out to be Andrei Vasilevsky. So, again, he knows when to make the big moves, the big trades. And I think, too, a lot of contracts which have sort of handicapped Detroit right now, he's that guy that I don't see would make those type of contracts or offer those deals to those guys.
Well, funny enough, he has, if you take a look at, of course, the Tampa Bay Lightning, who are eliminated in that first round, and you look at their cap situation, they have to re-sign Braden Point. They're going to have to re-sign Sergachev next year. They've got all these 4 free agent defensemen that are coming off the books, so they're going to have to do something about that. You consider that they're going to have to deal Palat or Tyler Johnson or a Killorn or maybe a Yanni Gord. There's a lot of players that anyone in that $5 million range that would open up some of that salary cap money to be able to re-sign some of these guys and bring in defensemen. I'm very high on Yzerman bringing one of these guys in.
Oh, wow. Okay.
100%. I think that, if they were able to, I know Tyler Johnson has a full no trade clause starting in 2021, but he is I think he submits a 20. Oh, no. He is, yes, right now he has a full no trade clause. So that might be a little harder to get him to waive. But hey, like a JT Miller, a guy who can play all over, maybe he's somebody who would be willing to go to Detroit and be a part of that. Where you have an Alex Killorn, he doesn't have he has a no trade clause later. So does So does Palat. But any number of those guys coming in and playing on the Red Wings, and if Steve Yzerman was the guy going to them and saying, like, I'm going to trade for you, do you want to be a part of this team? That's a ringing endorsement. He's the guy who brought them in there. And yeah, do you want to leave Tampa Bay? Maybe not, but it would be not a bad situation to go to a place where a guy has your back, and he's the one who really gave you your start with his team. So I think there's a trade that's going to happen there.
Let me ask you this: if you're Steve Yzerman, are you ballsy enough to put an offer sheet out on Braden Point?
Wow, yeah, maybe. Would you be willing to give Braden Point $10 million?
Absolutely. Boy, that's tough. But I will say it would give Detroit a great 1-2 punch at center, which they desperately need.
He had 92 points this year.
Not bad.
1 goal in the playoffs, but 92 points, and 66 the year before. Yeah, that's the thing, is that in order to get Braden Point, you're going to have to give $10 million. So then at that point, are you willing to give up 4 first-round draft picks? Probably not.
Oh, probably not. But
probably not. Now, could you? I mean, maybe there's a trade to be had for Braden Point if they aren't able to sign it. I just don't see it. I don't see it.
No.
But
I don't think if you're Tampa,
I think somebody else on there. I also think that there's a high probability that Braden Coburn is going to sign in Detroit.
Okay.
I haven't heard anything. I'm just thinking, who does Detroit need? What does Detroit need? They need defensemen. And Yzerman brought Braden Coburn in and really, frankly, like, took him from being this guy in Philadelphia that people kind of saw as an okay defenseman, and he is now seen as a very valuable guy to have on your back end. And I think maybe there's more of a need on the there's a need on both sides. Nicholas Kronwall is a left-handed defenseman, unrestricted free agent at the end of the year, and Braden Coburn is a left-handed defenseman, and that would be a pretty big upgrade. I won't say it's a huge upgrade, but it is an upgrade for sure, to be able to replace an aging and injury-prone Kronwall with Braden Coburn, who will probably get you 75 to 82 games on the season, can actually push the needle in the right direction, and is a good defensive defenseman in this league.
Okay.
All right. Well, I think that's our show. We'll, of course, we'll spend all off season breaking down every team. We'll probably spend a good 30 to 60 minutes per team come summertime, but we'll keep moving through these playoffs. Good luck to all the teams that are left over, and make sure that you spend a little bit of time before, during, and after those games drinking a little bit of whiskey.
There you go. That's
the way to do it. You watch a hockey game, you sip a little whiskey, and then as the game goes on, you get a little more angry. And but it does take the edge off of that stress. I've been feeling that stress, especially at Game 4 and Game 5. I've been feeling that little edge, so it takes a little bit of the edge off, but it definitely makes it a little easier to get angry at things. But making it sound like I'm an alcoholic, I'm really not. All right. Well, you guys have a great rest of your weekend, and we'll talk to you next week.